Hey there, it's Sam Smith with JP and Associates Realtors. I'm coming at you on the last day of June 2020. And what a month it has been. It's gone by really quickly, first of all. But it's been full of a lot of ups and downs. And so one of the things that I wanted to do is bring back someone that I had as, I think, was my first interviewee, Alicia Jones. She has many credentials under her belt. I had her first on here because she started the Mommy Support Network and conference, but she is a prolific writer. She's been an editor for, was it the Georgetown View magazine? Yes. Yeah, Georgetown View magazine. And she continued writing even after taking that hat off. And she has literally just published a book. And it's called Raising Antii-Racist Children. And so I wanted to have her on here, first of all, to talk about her book and to kind of walk us through some of the experiences that she has had as a mother and, just as a Black person in America, because I think that, a lot of people are going to identify with what you have to say, Alicia. A lot of people may be surprised by what you have to say, but I think the important part is to have these conversations. I know for us, we've been having these conversations like constantly in our house, just because it's upsetting, what's been going on. And like I was just saying to you before we got online, I don't know what the answers are. But I think a conversation is probably a good place to start. A couple of things I wanted to read. One thing from your book, where you were defining in the first chapter, you're defining what racism is. And you say, racism isn't a belief or ideology that remains confined within the mind of a person who holds this belief. It shows up in his or her actions and taints the systems over which they have influence. This is systemic racism, or institutional or structural racism. So, I think we have an idea of what racism looks like to see it in action, like real overt. But I think what we're experiencing right now in this country is, or could be considered, systemic racism, something that perhaps not all of us realize is really occurring. And certainly, you look at me and I look like a white woman. So I've lived my life as that, under that definition. And so, the people I have identified with in school, for example, feel like me, my peers. And I have no idea what it feels like to not have that be that way. So I appreciate that you wrote your book. I can't wait to hear what you have to say. So thank you, Alicia, for coming to interview with me again today.
Yes. Thank you, Samantha. Thank you so much for inviting me back. It's always good to be with you, and we always have some great conversations. Yes.
For sure. So you wrote this book. Literally, I just downloaded it on Kindle, which it's only $3, so anyone can download this book. Yeah. But I think that, what I'm gathering is that you have had conversations with other mothers who have a more Anglo background, who are trying to kind of understand what they think, and so they're asking you, as one of the people that they're asking, what does this all mean?
Right. Yes. Well, first of all, let me just say that for the people who have come to me and said, Alicia, I did not know that these things were going on. Obviously I know about racism, and, I don't consider myself a racist, or, I've had people say, I'm realizing that I have held some biases
Mhm.
and I have had racist thoughts and I have seen racist incidents and I didn't say anything. And now with, what's happening that we see on the media, with George Floyd and so many others, there are many George Floyds. We just don't know about them all. And, I think this is starting to come to the surface. And, these women are asking me, you know, what do we do? We want to be a part of the solution and not a part of the problem.
Right.
And commend I commend these women for coming forth and saying, can we just have a real honest conversation? Let me be honest with you about things that I have felt, things that I have tolerated, because I want to make a difference. And I think these women can be commended for starting that conversation.
Yeah. Mhm. Well, I'm glad you have friends that it's easy to trust you, I think, Alicia. And obviously, you have a lot of friends who do trust you enough to admit that they may be wrong or they may have been wrong. And so my understanding, your goal with this book is to describe what racism is or could be, whether it's overt or systemic, and then also kind of give people maybe some ideas of what to look for in themselves, but in our society at large.
Yeah.
Is that what inspired you, or?
Yeah, certainly. Yes, for sure. I think the conversations with my friends, the questions I was getting, but also just this sense of being tired of the fact that, racism still exists, if not overtly, certainly within the systems that perpetrated them.
Mhm.
So, and the effects of that are still here. And I think what really moved me is one of the things that really moved me is watching the George Floyd funeral service
Mhm.
and just being in mourning, not just with their family, with their friends, but mourning for our nation, mourning for all peoples. The fact that, we are still dealing with this in the year, 2020, and really feeling like, I may not be able to do or say much, but this I can do. I can record those thoughts and share them with other people. And, the friends who have come to me, and I believe when they say, we just didn't realize that this was still an issue for African American people and people of color. And, it's like the blinders have been taken off. And so, there's that set of people. There are other people who say, well, I'm colorblind. I don't see color, which, I talk about that in the book. I mean, the fact is that we come in different shades, we come in different races and ethnicities. So I don't think the answer is trying to paint everybody with the same brush. It's, how do we respect one another equally, regardless of the color of our skin, because we're all created by the same God who created us equal.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you mentioned that, which I love this from Genesis. And then God said, let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so they may rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, the livestock and all the wild animals, and over all the creatures that move along the ground. So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful and increase in numbers. There's just a few sentences, and it completely implies that we are equal, male and female. It doesn't mean we're all the same,
Right.
does not mean that we are all the same, but we're equal. You know, God sees us as equal. So, so tell me, you put a couple of examples of experiences that you have had, like your fifth grade experience, moving from Newark, which I've been to Newark before. It's a city, you know. There are all kinds of people everywhere in every part of that city, and then moving to a small town in California. Sorry, my cat. I knew she was going to come in. But, you know, you moved to California, which was a completely different demographic, and sounds like people didn't know what to do with you. What was your experience like?
Yeah, yeah. Well, coming from the inner city, like you said, you have all kinds of people there, a very large African American community, but also Italian,
Mm-hmm.
a mixture of just about everything. And, we had our tiffs as children do on the block, the normal stuff that you get into it with other children as a elementary school kid. But when we moved to this small town in California, we were the third African American family to move there ever.
Yeah.
And
I can only imagine.
yeah, culture shock. I mean, we went from the concrete, the buildings and the homes close together to, farmland pretty much. And, I think that as a child, you're just thinking, oh, let's find some kids to play with, right? What color they are, let's just play. And, in the book, I talk about walking to school with my sister and having rocks thrown at us by these little white kids, throwing rocks and calling us names and telling us that, the reason why we were dark was because we were dirty, and they told us to go home and take a bath. And although in Newark, we had skirmishes with other kids, the usual thing, no one had ever told us that we were less than because of the color of our skin. I mean, that was completely foreign to us.
Yeah.
And, I don't remember many of the other tiffs I might have had with other kids, in the inner city, but that sticks out to me as a moment where I questioned my value as a person because of the things that those kids said. And then, there were other experiences along the way. And, as I think about that, and I think about other people who have endured verbal abuse as a person of color, and certainly physical abuse as a person of color, those things have a way of eating at your soul, and it really requires from the home being really rooted and grounded in who you are, the beauty of who you are, the value that you have. But, those kinds of things really eat at a person's soul. And, in the book, I say, I think that there are a lot of people of color who are walking wounded because they've had those experiences and, maybe have not healed from them, what have you. But, I share those kinds of experiences, Samantha, not to drag out old stories, they're real, they happened, and not to, make anybody feel like, oh, see, poor me. But I gave those examples because my friends who were asking me about my experiences never had anything like that happen to them. And it was one of the ways I could try to share, this is what racism does. Let me give you these examples to try and bring you into that. You can never feel it 100% because you weren't there, and the same thing didn't happen to you. But it was my way of saying, look, here's some examples of things that happen to people of color.
Yeah. And I mean, for sure, I was thinking as you were talking, all of us were kids at one time, and it doesn't matter what the demographic or whatever. There's just certain points in life where, you know, kids are trying to make themselves better than one another. And, you know, a lot of people won't have what you just described, but there'll be some sort of defining moment where they felt like someone made them felt like crap, you know. You know, we call it bullying these days. It happens all the time, and you're never going to eradicate it because it's just something that does happen. But, you know, here's the difference in what my experience was. You know, I remember riding the bus home, and there was this one kid that lived up the street, and you know, I was a tomboy, so I was wearing my old jeans that I always wore to ride my horse and like work outside and everything. And there was a little tiny hole in the knee. And this one boy, he was just like, looked at it and pointed it out. And he was like, your parents are poor. You know, he just had to tell me my parents were poor because I had a hole in my jeans. And I thought, you know, like that was really crappy, number one. But when I hear a story like what you were talking about, I could change my jeans. You know, you like you and other people of color can't change their genes, can't change their background, can't change where they're from, can't change their history. You know, it's, you know, it's just something you can't take on and put, or take off and put on. You know, it's just, it is a difference that, I don't know. That's a question I have for you. Is that a difference that we're supposed to be, how much are we supposed to notice the difference between the colors of our skin? And, you know, what are we supposed to do with that?
Yeah. So, you know, the fact is that we are different. You know, we come from different places in the world, different ethnicities. And I love the color of my skin, and I love my heritage as an African American woman. But I think when people start to say, well, because, you know, my background is X, you know, and I come either from the dominant culture or I come from a background of the dominant culture or the majority or what have you. And, you know, that makes me better than you. You know, therein lies the problem, you know. And in the book, I mention slavery. And, you know, people are probably tired of hearing about that. But, you know, there's a root there that has a lot to do with where we are today. And, you know, the fact that, you know, one group of people said, well, I am better than you. You are 3/5 human. You're not even 100% human. I'm going to forbid you from reading. I'm going to forbid you from, you know, using the same water fountains that I use because I'm better than you. You know, that's a problem. And I think that you know, when we look at that and the effect of that, it's like having someone pass on a blood disease to you that just passes from generation to generation until it's washed away. And so I think that you know, we have to talk about that root because that's part of the issue. And, you know, to your question, what do we do with the fact that we are different? We accept the fact that we are different. And, you know, as a woman of faith, my perspective is that, you know, God created us in his image. That means that all of us are born with a value that's in the image of God. And, you know, some of your viewers may believe in God, some may not. That's my perspective. So, you know, we look different, but that doesn't make one person better than anybody else. And I think we ought to embrace the fact that we are different.
Yeah. Well, and, you know, I think this conversation can, you know, when we're talking about differences and appreciating differences or noticing differences, you know, I really do feel like that is something that can spread across many different ways that we are different. You know, some people, I mean, just not everybody looks the same. And I think that's the most beautiful part. Not everyone behaves the same. Not, you know, like we don't all have the same culture. I'm an anthropologist by, you know, school. Like that's my major. And I've always thought how fascinating it is that we have this world full of people who are, everyone's different. You know, a lot of people are the same, you know, in certain areas, but you know, I just have never really understand why would you not enjoy that? Or why would you feel threatened by that? I mean, I guess that I grew up obviously felt very secure in my, you know, besides being poor, but, um, there are people have different abilities, physical abilities, mental abilities, and everyone has something to give. And I know that for a fact. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, you said something about, you were raised in a home where, there was security in who you are. And I think that is a big part of it. And that's part of what made me want to write Raising Anti-Racist Children, because it does start at home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Even before it starts at home with our children, it starts with our own hearts, and really taking a look at what we believe.
Yeah.
And are we acting out those beliefs? And do we need to shift those beliefs to be in alignment with truth? And, I think forgiveness and repentance, I mean, it's all part of it. But I think how we raise our children is just so key. We have so much influence as a parent, as a teacher, as a coach. We have so much influence over how our little ones see the world and see other people. And I think we have a great opportunity as influencers in their lives to teach all of our children that, we are created equal with equal value.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's definitely something that, not everyone plans to be a parent. I know I was blessed with my children. So I didn't really think it out. Like, what am I going to be? What kind of a parent am I going to be? And I can always imagine that other people, I'm sure there are lots of people who are in a similar situation, and, you just hope that people are wanting to do the best for their kids, and also teachers, educators, people in authority. And I think that's one of the other aspects you wanted to touch on is like, it's not just parents. It is parents, but at the same time, you send your kids to school before March 2020. That is, you send your kids to school, so they're with all these other adults who they're trained to respect, listen to, follow instruction. And so you just hope that those people that you're trusting your kids with are also thinking the same way, that the world is full of diversity and interesting, that all that diversity is interesting, not to be scorned. So you wrote this book also with an educator or another sort of authority figure in mind. Is that right?
Yes. Anybody who has authority or influence over children. And you're right, in some cases, the teachers see our children more than we do.
Yeah.
Pre-March 2020, at least August is going to look like when it's time for school to start again. But we really are all in a position of influence over children. Some more than others, particularly as a teacher, administrator, parent, coach, Sunday school teacher, whatever those roles are. And that's why I think it's so important for us as adults to really do some soul searching about, and some real honest soul searching about how we feel about other people, just in general. I don't care what color you are.
Yeah.
You know, what's our life view about the value of human life? And really do some soul searching about that, and identifying areas where we may hold biases or preconceived notions or blatant, racist ideals that may have been passed down, and just accepted as the norm. So I really do think it starts with us as individuals, because if we don't do that, how do we know what to teach children? And I think the other thing is not just being, and I hate the word tolerant, because I just don't like that word, because it puts still one above the other. But, when we're talking about valuing human life as equal, that's the first step. But going even further to say, and if I see something that is not in alignment with that, I'm going to call it out.
Yeah.
Whether it's in the classroom, whether it's in the grocery store, I'm going to speak up and say, you know what? No, this is not right.
Yeah. Yeah. That takes a lot of courage. And I think it's appropriate now to be more courageous, not to start fights with people in the grocery store. But,
I know there are enough other things to start fights about in the grocery store.
Yeah,
that's
like,
for sure.
Yeah, whether you wear a mask or not, for example,
right.
Or use gloves.
Right.
But, yeah. I mean, there's so many. We are living life. We all have the same stresses. Like the same basic ones. Like we have needs that, like food, shelter, air and water. Security, and at the bottom or top of it, whatever you want to think of it, the basis of it is we are all struggling in some way. We are all stressed out. We are all happy also. We have the same joys and pains. Why do we need to make it harder for each other? What would that benefit me to make it harder for anybody? I hope people ask themselves that kind of question, once, but at the same time, like you were saying, there's so many things that you're just not aware of that you're doing to hurt somebody else, or to dismiss them, or, make them feel less than. So I think this is really an important time to be self-reflective. And I think a book like yours is giving us an opportunity to look at stories and think about ourselves. And it doesn't mean that you're condemning or anything like that, or any stories are condemning. It's just think about it, So, and by the way, anyone who's watching, this is it's a concise book. Let me just say, I think it's very to the point. I only got about halfway through it this morning, but Alicia brings up a lot of just good illustrations and examples of things to look for, not only in other people, but in oneself and one's circumstance. Just to think. I mean, that's all we've got right now is time, because we're all still
a lot of that. For sure. Yeah, and I think your comment about this is the time for courage. I think that's very true. This is the time for courage, and certainly for myself, just applying that to me. Really realizing that. What are you doing, Alicia, to make a difference? What are you contributing? What are you doing? And so this book is part of the answer to that. I'm always thinking about that, and what more can I be doing? To be not just a hearer of how God tells us to live, but actually a doer, and being part of the solution. I want to be part of the solution.
Yeah. Same here. Well, I think writing a book is an excellent way to do that, or at least get the ball rolling. And then being willing to have these conversations, like you said, with your friends who bring it up to you, and with other people who just, it doesn't always have to be two different races talking to come to a conclusion, or to come to a realization. I've shared with you that my daughter is 1/4 African. And so, one of the things that I'm starting to realize, I think she's been trying to tell me this, but, she grew up in Georgetown, and I don't talk about this normally because I'm like, my cat's still here. Sorry. I just hit in the face. But, like I said, I embrace cultural differences and, physical differences and stuff like that. And so I kind of grew up because I knew her dad, and it was just, she was an extension of him, and there was no reason for me to think of her differently or present her differently or expect her to be differently or whatever. But, growing up in a community like this, it's easier. I mean, not that it's easier. I think it was very easy for her to be around all people, when especially like in high school, she got older and more self-aware and stuff like that. But I know when she was younger, she did have similar experiences. Like, why does my skin look like this? And why do I look so different than you, Mom? And why, people are always telling me my skin looks so beautiful. And why, it made her feel weird, just because that was always what people were commenting on was physical appearance. And so now that she's been in college and she's at a school that has a very high Black population, I won't say African American because a lot of them are from Africa or from all over the world, but people of color. And, she's realizing what kind of environment she grew up in was very different than what she feels comfortable in now. When she's around people of color, that's where she feels comfortable. And I know I'm doing a lot of speaking for her. I need to interview her actually one day on this.
Yes.
Because there's a lot that maybe I did her a disservice by not understanding more on my own, for me to understand what she might be going through. And, you want to provide the best for your kids. And I think, there's just much to be learned. I know I can learn a lot. I still have a lot to learn. No matter how many friends I have who are people of color or are diverse or other countries or whatever, it doesn't matter because we're all living life in a different way. I've also not always identified as white just because that's just my family is from the Middle East. So I've always been like, well, we're sort of like people of color, but I'm also clueless when it comes to that kind of thing. So, but I can remember feeling different and being, kind of my family being sort of singled out in some ways, but anyhow, that's a whole other conversation. Too much about me now.
I think something you said about, we all want to be good parents. And we really do. We all, for the most part, we all dedicate our lives and make the sacrifices as parents and teachers and other people who have influence over children. That is something we have in common. We want our next generation, we want our children to just have a full and abundant, joyful, happy, successful life, and I think that's something we all share, and so, we talk about trying to find ways that we are more the same than we are different. I mean, that's one of the ways, as parents, as moms, we all want the same things for our children. And, that makes us more alike than different. Certainly there are cultural differences, but, I think that that's one way. I mean, as the head of Mommy Support Network, that's one of the things that I see, that, I work with people of all backgrounds, all races, and we all want the same thing. We want our children to have an opportunity for success.
Yeah.
And, if anybody says, well, mine should be more successful because of, whatever reason, I think it hurts everybody.
Yeah.
So I think that's a common ground we can all start from.
Yeah, I agree. Yep. Yeah, that sounds good. Thank you so much, Alicia. We could probably continue this conversation another time, but first I'm going to bring Sophia on here. I think maybe I'm going to get her to come on next week, and we'll talk about her perspectives and stuff like that. But I hope that a lot of people read your book. I hope a lot of people feel like a conversation can be started by what emotions are coming up, or what, just what they don't understand about what is coming up. It could be in any direction, or what their automatic, knee-jerk response is when they read some of the stories in your book. I think it's going to give people an opportunity just to reflect. And like you said, become a better parent, a better person, and just, grow a little. And we can always grow every single year of our lives, even though we think we know it all, we can still grow.
Right. My daughter's in her mid-20s, and I'm still learning and growing, for sure. Maybe I'll have it together by the time I become a grandmother.
Yeah, I think that's why our kids like their grandparents so much, because by then everyone's like kind of starting to get a little more laid back and understand things a little better. Oh well.
Right.
Anyhow, well, I look forward to talking to you again sometime very soon, in person, but also on here, because I'd like to have you back, because I'm sure you're going to have some new conversations to talk about, over the next few months as people start to read and get in touch with you and everything. So
right. I'd love to come back, and thank you so much for allowing me to spend some time with you and your audience, Samantha. It's always such a pleasure.
Yeah, good. All right. Well, I'll say bye to our audience, and you hang on for just a second, and we'll catch up after we close out. But thank you, everybody who watched. Feel free to comment. If you have questions for Alicia, if you have questions for me, I'm also, after this, I think actually in the description I may have put a link to where her book is for sale on Amazon. Like I said, it's only $3, the Kindle version. And I think it's like $9 for the physical version. Either way, I don't think you can go wrong by taking a look at this one. And anyhow, if you have questions, let us know. Thank you.
Thank you.